Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today I am back in my old enemy, not stairs, aircraft carriers. Because the, almost complete rest of the British carrier tech tree has been released in preview. So it's about time to take a look at Tier 7, and that is the Illustrious. Now, the Illustrious had... forgive me the pun, but she had definitely an illustrious career and has been involved in many sort of pivotal things. But what I want to really talk about a little bit, because it's also more relevant to what the ship's stats are in game, is the fact that the Illustrious was an armored carrier. Now, most of the time when we're talking about armored carriers, the first thing you read is, had an armored deck. And you think, okay, well, somebody did away with the wooden planks on it and put some steel on top of it, and that is that. Sounds like a decent idea. Why wasn't everyone doing that? Well, first, there's a lot more to it than that, and second, there's a good reason not everyone was doing that. So the Illustrious was designed as a successor to the Ark Royal, but they didn't want to just make like a different Ark Royal. They also had a certain problem with treaties, because they had a limitation of how big they could make these things, and the carrier had to be relatively small. Now, the British at the time were thinking relatively hard about, well, how would they use aircraft carriers? So they didn't just want to build aircraft carriers for the fun of it, but they had a very, very certain purpose. The British aircraft carriers would be operating either around the British Islands, or in the Mediterranean, or around the British colonial possessions. So somewhere Strait of Malacca, Singapore, these areas. Now, all these areas have one thing in common. They have in common that they're relatively close to enemy land bases. And the one thing that the British were afraid of when they were designing these ships was that they would come under constant attack of land-based aircraft. And the design actually happened before radar was a thing for fighter vectoring. So the doctrine at the time said pretty much carrier-borne fighters cannot stand up against a concentrated attack of land-based bombers, and that means that the carrier will be hit. And it's just because something will get through, because you just don't have the time to get the fighters out there in time. So carriers have to be survivable, because we are fighting in confined spaces, more or less, as oceans go, and we are in range of land-based aircraft. So they figured, they had a look at what the other nations were designing. The Americans and the Japanese had a very, very different perspective on this, because the Americans built their ships around carrying the maximum amount of strike force, because they were not operating usually within range of land-based fighters or bombers. They were usually operating in the wide open Pacific, or at least that was the expectation. So they were maximizing their initial strike, whereas the British were maximizing the survivability of their ships. Now, when we're talking about armored deck, it's a completely different concept. Effectively, starting with the Illustrious, these carriers had not a two-story deck, but only a single-story deck. But effectively, their hangar bay was an armored citadel of sorts, because they figured, well, it's full of fighters and lots of things that react very poorly to being shot at, like ammunition and fuel and such. And a carrier without planes is usually pretty useless. So we want to ensure that the planes are properly protected. So on an American carrier of the same generation, the flight deck would be sort of part of the superstructure. On a British carrier, on the Illustrious, not so much. It was really an integral part of the ship's structure. Actually, some of the armor plating on the hangar deck were there because they needed to support the ship structurally, which meant, of course, that the whole thing was rather top-heavy. And obviously they only could put one one hangar in there, which somewhat restricted the amount of aircraft that they could fit into this thing. But in return, these things were designed to deal with, well, being bombed. Now, again, unfortunately, the Royal Air Force at the time was assuring the Navy that the heaviest bomb load they could be expecting in case of war would be 250 kilograms or 500 pounds, which, of course, wasn't the case. So they designed their decks to withstand 250 kilos, and then only then to find out that other people were carrying heavier stuff and dropping it onto them, which still, you could think, defeated the purpose, but still, the Illustrious has been attacked in the Mediterranean by after raids on Italian ships by Stukas, by German dive bombers, and has been severely punished with multiple direct bomb hits that have caused some fires and disabled some elevators, but haven't sunk the ship. Because the other thing that the British were doing was saying, okay, now that we've protected the hangar, what are we going to do with the rest of all these things that go boom when being shot at and react very poorly, like the spare aviation fuel, for example, or the replacement bombs and torpedoes. And being ship designers, they figured, well, we'll put it in the bottom of the ship and make sure that it's as protected as it can be from being shot at, because that is generally not a good thing. So they had a thing like they were compromising on the amount of ammunition and fuel that these things could carry, again, under the auspice of survivability. And as the Japanese have found out the hard way, this sort of thing can go very wrong pretty quickly. So the Illustrious actually survived the massive beating she was taking from the German dive bombers, and survived the war in general, but all in all coming at the cost of some airplanes in terms of hangar space, because also the British weren't used to stowing them on top of the hangar, because they were sailing around in the Atlantic and it could get a little windy up there. So there's so many more things that fascinating things I found about these British carrier designs. I might actually make a whole video just about that, because it's just, I mean, at least for me, it's just super interesting. But what does this mean in game? So if we compare the Illustrious to the Ark Royal, which is technically its predecessor, but is also a tier 7 premium, then one thing that you immediately notice is that the Illustrious is a little bit sturdier, and once again that reflects that sort of. But when we look at the loadout, the Illustrious actually carries very, very few planes. In fact, she only carries 42 planes all in all. 15 dive bombers, 15 torpedo bombers, and 12 fighters. Whereas the Ark Royal carries a grand total of 56 planes, if you add them up. So that starts hurting. And the British throughout the war actually, obviously realized that and did some mitigations, like things like outriggers where they could park more planes on the top of the deck. And they did tend to have larger air groups. Also, and once again, I'm talking about that in some separate way, but there are different ways of counting planes. So, for example, the Americans would count planes that were disassembled as spare parts. The British were not. They only counted the planes that were actually operational. So, the other fun part is that we have another Illustrious class carrier in the game. That's the Indomitable at tier 8. So how is that working out then? Well, the Indomitable sort of seems to be incorporating the wartime experience of the British of, well, putting more planes into the thing, a little bit at least, because she gets, instead of, 42, she gets a grand total of 45 planes, but they're obviously a lot better planes. So not quite comparable, very sturdy plane. So you don't get deplaned in an Indomitable very quickly, whereas in an Illustrious, that is definitely a problem you're having a lot. Right, other than that, so how does she compare to, let's say, an American carrier? Because I think that's where, that's something we're going to have to throw in here. So let's just take the Ranger. Let's be kind, and let's add the Ranger to the list, because the Illustrious has another problem, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if we compare her, let's say, to the Ranger, then it once again is noticeable that the Ranger obviously has more planes than we do. They're comparable. The dive bombers are somewhat comparable. The torpedo bombers are sort of different once again, because the British torpedo bombers, the British torpedoes don't have the same range. I think also not the same speed, although no, actually it says they have actually a better torpedo speed. Okay, then that was just me being bad at it. But yeah, they don't do the same amount of damage, but in return you get two squadrons to control. And if we're comparing the fighters, then the British have a pretty decent health advantage, but the fighters, they don't quite do as much damage, but they're not bad. So definitely not bad in that regard. Now, what is that problem I'm talking about? Well, you're tier 7. You know what's floating around at tier 7, right? Saipans. I haven't gone up against the Saipan, but I would probably you can end your game right there, because a Saipan can probably deplane you in no time. This ship just doesn't have a large amount of airplanes, and a competent Saipan player is a menace for anything tech tree wise, and something that has such a small loadout. Well, you can kind of see where this is going. But yeah, if you compare her, for example, to the Ark Royal, you see that the Illustrious is a lot lower in the water, and that's because she only has a single hangar, and that's where the lower loadout comes from. Anyway, enough complaining about it. What can we get? We can get slightly better torpedo bombers, which is great if you know how to use them. I mean, I got a little bit better, but still, I'm nowhere near good with these things, and I do miss my torpedo bombers even against battleships at times. Or you can go for a faster cycle time, which is just generally what I've used here, because I might as well I might as well try and do my best in getting some damage done. The equipment, I have picked the fighter modification because the fighters are decent. I mean, they're not really outstanding, but I think they're up on par with the American ones. You could obviously once again try and sacrifice something for capacity. So let's say if you feel like you want more, you want a couple more torpedo bombers, and you want to sacrifice some dive bombers for it. I think that's a generally good thing. Or just generally take the carrier hangar modification for slightly more capacity. But then again, it's like 1 or 2 planes. It's not a huge amount, but this is, if you don't want to play with the fighters, this is what I would definitely recommend as the best option here, to just have even just a few more planes and compensate a bit for that relatively small loadout. I have the air defense in slot 2 because these things actually have some AA, and I have the concealment mod in 3, which makes sense for my personal style of putting them a little bit forward if I have to. You can, if you so desire, put a camouflage on it, which gives you hit points, a bit bomb damage, torpedo damage, and better surface detection. So it's it's all in all a good thing. Although personally, I find the Illustrious rather difficult to play, and I'm not sure I would. I'm not an experienced carrier player, but taking this thing out against the dreadful 3 of the tier 7 premium carriers, I probably would just get across and to tier 8 and then hope that it gets better there. I don't know if anybody really plays tier 7 carriers that much outside of the premiums. I have a commander in there. Obviously, there are a couple of skills that you really want to have on a carrier. You want the return speed, you want the fighter efficiency, and you want the exploit weakness, because fires and floodings are your friend. Although once again you are somewhat suffering from the British cluster bomb setup, because the chances of getting fires with these things are just not good. You get fires sometimes, but it's nowhere near the chance that you have, say, on an American carrier with the dive bombers. So I think we've covered pretty much everything. Let's have a go and see me fail miserably in a carrier. Our first engagement, we're up against the Hiryu. I did say I didn't encounter any premium carriers, but it is a... Well, we're top tier. So we have a Nagato, a Colorado, a Fuso, a Miyoko, and an Icarus. And we're playing Domination on Haven. So mid-tier battles on Haven can get interesting. But we'll see what we can do against that Japanese carrier, who is flying with a conspicuously British camouflage. Well, not that I disapprove of it. Definitely not. But that plane noise, by the way, is outside. That's not... I've got the window open because it is rather hot out here today. And I'd be sweating up a dread otherwise. Alright, so I'm sending the dive bombers and I'm sending one group of torpedo bombers out first and the fighters to do some scouting. So there are some enemy planes coming. We'll see if we can start intercepting those. And just at the same time keep an eye on things. I generally tend to, and maybe that's just me, but I tend to start off with one group of torpedo bombers because it's just easier to control. I still haven't shot anything down, but our fighters are sort of working on it. We have spotted something. Yeah, there's a Nagato, so we can start doing some damage. Of course, 9 bomb hits and 0 fires. That is the big problem you're going to have really with the Japanese, with the British, and 3 torpedo hits and no floodings with the British carriers. We have been, by the way, our fighters have been chasing these planes all the way across their approach, and we haven't shot a single one of them down. So with that sort of, there we got plane kill. With that sort of experience, I don't know, maybe go for the hangar space rather, but there is an Icarus. So our fighters have spotted an Icarus. I don't want to get them too close to the enemy carrier. So I'm just kind of positioning them in the middle there and then getting some planes out against said Icarus, that we can do something about him. Now the dive bombers obviously will have locked on, so they are already going to go this way. And I just follow up with the torpedo bombers and see if I can get a hit in. I was like through 3 lengths of the ship. There we got a fire, and I have dropped a little bit further away, but that also means that I'm not quite getting all the torpedoes on target. Only one, unfortunately. So a little bit more close next time. But the second squadron is ready of torpedo bombers, so I'm just sending the fighters over there. But I think the Icarus is going to be spotted from that Nagato. Now he is going to run into the island, so he's going to have to turn left or right. Okay, he's turning left. I mean, from his perspective, and he's smoking up. So I'm just going to send my torpedo bombers over here and see if because it's a fuel smoke, he'll run out of it eventually. And now I'm just going to return them. And then do a second run up because he's out of fuel smoke, and then I can get the second run going and have a much cleaner shot. So this is going to force him to go broadside to the Ismail, because he's going to have to dodge my torpedoes if he doesn't want to be hit. And then hopefully the second set of torpedo bombers plus the dive bombers can do something about him, because now he can't easily dodge anymore. So dive bomber out, torpedoes out, and these torpedoes are looking good, but the Ismail just takes him out before I can get to it. So. Well, I'm reasonably pleased with myself. So I do have an Icarus here on my side. I'm trying to I think the fighters locked onto each other. So I'm just going to dunk some torpedoes over there. And for inexplicable reasons, the Ismail has now figured that he doesn't want to guard me anymore. Unfortunately, I haven't realized that yet at that point, because I'm too busy directing my planes. And there's a Fuso coming my way. So right about now, what I should have done here is turn rather hard right, and full speed ahead and get behind the islands there. Unfortunately, at this point, it's a little too late because I've been too busy with playing with my fighters, trying to do something about these enemy planes. I mean, I've shot 5 down, but in the meantime, I haven't paid attention, and my torpedo bombers have missed the Fuso. So. And now I realize that the Fuso is almost in detection range and is coming straight for me. And like last time I looked, there was an Ismail there who was guarding me. Where did that thing go? I don't know. So panicking trying to get the torpedo bombers on target. And yeah, that was not what I wanted. So return and do it again. So that should sit. But now I'm obviously spotted. Now the good thing is that the Fuso doesn't seem to have realized that the carrier is spotted. But also the enemy carrier is focusing on me. But well, in the meantime, my team has killed probably all the enemy teams, so it's not such a drama all in all. But yeah, I might want to do something about this because at some point Fuso is going to realize that I'm here. So I am already reversing, And the Illustrious actually has a decent amount of guns. These are small dual-purpose guns, so I think 113 millimeters or something. But there's plenty of them, and I think Fuso has now realized that the carrier is right next to him. So I'm just putting the fighters on top of myself because the enemy carrier is trying to sink me as well, which suits me because it means that my team can just mop up the rest of them if they're not busy focusing on someone else. So I'm just about survival here. And yeah, once again, I think I am shooting some planes down. I think these torpedoes... I've still got 2 torpedo hits, shot his rudder off. So maybe I can still get a perma-fire going, but so I'm turning around just to get my guns on target. And, you know, if you're in a brawl with a battleship anyway, may as well use them. But of course, no fires, that would have been too easy. Well, second salvo out, and then we will check again if I got some planes to use. And just dodge some return fire. And I mean, the carrier is going for me as well now. The problem is obviously for their team is that they're not going to win this way because even though it is close on points, my team is now controlling 3 of the capture circles, and I have drawn these 2 so far away from the action that they're probably not going to get back into it. And that Fuso is almost out. If I can just land another... No, I can't land another salvo. I mean, I would like to claim that this was my plan, to draw the 2 of them out. But in reality, you know, I've just really not paid attention that I was being rushed by a Fuso and that my Ismail had gone. And yeah, I've really not... I can't take credit for that one. But, you know, if I hadn't fluffed these torpedoes earlier, I might have almost killed the Fuso, honestly. So that still almost worked. And, well... To all intents and purposes, my team is still behind, but we are holding 3 of the capture circles because the carrier hasn't been harassing anyone. And yeah, there's the hear you. So they're now trying to get back, but I think we have enough time to win on points if that Fubuki doesn't do something utterly stupid, like getting himself killed by a carrier. Because that's the Japanese carrier, and there are 2 wings of torpedo bombers out there. So I'm not sure what the... Oh dear, this is not looking good. I'm not sure what that zipping around there of the torpedo bombers was, but I think the Fubuki is also fluffing up his torpedoes. So yeah, these haven't really hit. Otherwise, the Hiryu would have been dead. But the Fubuki has managed to put the Hiryu between himself and the torpedoes, so this hasn't. We almost managed to try and win harder than we actually should have. And yeah, the Ismail seems to have still done a good job despite abandoning me to my fate down there. But yeah, can't really blame him. I should have started moving a hell of a lot earlier than I was. So. And yeah, these 25 planes are not just down to my fighter skills, far from it. It's more down to the fact that the enemy carrier was focusing on me, and I have somewhat of an AA setup. And the British carriers are not bad with AA. So, let's do a second one. You know, I'm really just doing that for entertainment purposes, am I not? Anyway, we are up against a Ranger, and then there's Nagato, Hipper, Lightning, and Scorner. And we're playing Epicenter on Frozen Shelter. Which means I have the less than glorious job of trying to torpedo a Lightning and a Scorner. Yeah, that's not going to go well, is it? Anyway, I'm going to give it a good old try. We do have a Cleveland and a Zara on our side, and these things can make short work of them. Maybe, I'm once again going with Death from Above's advice here. Maybe it's just about keeping them spotted, you know, for the cruisers. That would be great. We are bottom tier, by the way, if I forgot to mention that. But the presence of the Cleveland should be a good hint. So once again, we're doing the same thing. Fighters in the middle. Torpedo bombers out. Just one flight, because I don't have that many of them anyway. And I can't control that many wings in the same time. And I'm careful trying not to get my my fighters captured. But it doesn't look like the enemy carrier. Oh yeah, there come the enemy fighters. So I'm trying to... I'm not sure they're for... I think I was too early. But I'm just going to send my fighters back. There's the Scorner. So I'm not sure if his fighter's locked on, but can't really tell. But we'll just drop some torpedoes on that guy and see if we can just dissuade him from coming in my coming in the general direction of the center cap here. But it seems like he has realized that I am absolutely incompetent when it comes to these things and is absolutely undeterred. But we have shot something down. Woohoo! A plane. 3 planes. Nice. I'm not sure how we did that, but Scorner is now turning. So we'll try with the other group of torpedo bombers and see if that can do any better. So once again, that was too close, so return home, do another loop, but we are sailing over an Admiral Hipper, which isn't a great AA ship, but still, you know, we don't really want to don't really want to sit there too long. So I'm trying to shoot something down. I mean, the enemy carrier is focusing on the Cleveland. I should tell you a lot about that. And yeah, I'm just trying to keep these destroyers spotted there in the middle as well while I'm at it, and just sending some more things out while giving some air cover to the Cleveland. But my fighters are running low on hit points. So yeah, once again we'll drop the Scorner, and we just want to get these guys out of the center cup. We are holding, we're just holding the outer ring right now, but and we have, I think, lost. Have we lost? No, we haven't lost anything yet. Alright, so once more, like, as the German saying goes, once more with feeling. Have we managed to capture the fighters? I think we may have. So the Scorner is once again in a wild turn, so these torpedoes are just not going to hit him, but they're also going to prevent him on going any closer, and yeah, that's just a bot, so we're not going to care about that. I'm still going to try. Scorner is in a turn, so we'll just try to drop torpedoes from the outside, so it's not so easy for him to sail into them. Of course, the Scorner is changing direction because he's not an idiot, so these are also going to miss. And I think at this point I'm just going to give up. I've just tried to keep the Scorner spotted. I mean, he is on relatively low health. There's also the Lightning. So I think at some point these two are going down. If our cruisers can manage to get some fire out onto them, that would be great. The enemy Ranger is, I would say, rather brave, but I'm not sure that's the correct description. There's an Admiral Hipper, which is a much bigger problem for our Cleveland. And he is being torpedoed from the rear by something. I don't know what that is. Oh, it's the Zara, okay. So instead of going after the destroyers in the center, they're trying to brawl a Hipper. Well, that's something I can help out with, because Cleveland is picking up the slack and has taken out the Scorner. That gets them down to 1 destroyer, even though we're behind on points and behind on kills. But I should be able to at least help out a little bit with that Admiral Hipper. Once again, the absolute absence of... and yeah, the carrier is still trying to kill the Cleveland. Good luck with that. And we've once again managed to capture his fighters. So even though my fighters, I think I'm going to... Oh, there's a flood. Nice, nice flood. So, see if we can get permafire, because he Damaconed the flood, obviously. And I'm returning my fighters because I'm down to 1. And he's on very low hit points, and putting the carrier forward because we might have to help out with capping here a little bit. Okay, Lightning kills the enemy Ranger. That pulls us back a bit on score, and we are now holding the center cup because the destroyers are not in a good shape. And I'm just trying to. I'm not sure if that's perma. That might be too late. Hipper is sailing forwards, so we're going to try and torp him against the island. No, it seems to be perma fire, but just 1. So. He is getting next to the island, but he seems to have stopped again, so we'll fly over and then torpedo him from the other side, rather than donking the torpedoes on top of the island like an idiot. And yeah, the Cleveland is trying to deal with the Hipper. 2 torpedo hits, still no floods again. And Hipper is now moving forward. He is turning left, I think, but I want to play it safe here, so we get that sent out, and then the dive bombers the Cleveland takes out the Hipper. Dive bombers go after the Lightning, because he is somewhat dangerous, although the enemy team is down to 3 ships, so at this point it's really just about grabbing some capture points. I feel like Zara is somewhere on the complete opposite end of the map, trying to brawl a battleship. But Cleveland is doing a great job of what he's supposed to be doing and dealing with destroyers, even though he only got down to that business after the Hipper was dealt with. Now, to be fair, the Hipper was the much bigger threat to the Cleveland. So let's see if we can catch the Lightning in that smoke. And yeah, look, I did a thing. I killed a destroyer in the smoke. I'm proud of myself. He wasn't making it difficult. And that gets the center cup. Yeah, we've got all the capture circles. I'm here with the Cleveland, even though we've lost our Lightning against the bot Takao, because, you know, things like that happen. We can now, it's just the battleship, which seems to be AFK, and the bot Takao over there. So we're just going to turn left and help out a little bit on the other side, and just try to farm some damage on that bot, because bots don't Damacon. And I seem to have run into an island. That's unfortunate. Who put that there? But I'm trying to turn the ship around to get my guns on target, because, you know, that's just what I'm comfortable with, honestly. And see if the Takao is dead before my planes get there anyway. So let's see if we can get the kill on the Takao. because I feel like we deserved that after all the supporting we did against the destroyers, keeping them spotted. And that should be, yes, that is a main gun kill on a top tier cruiser while in a carrier, even though it's a bot. I mean, and they have an AFK Nagato, so they were really disadvantaged from the very beginning. But, you know, anyway. So, the Illustrious. Is it a great ship? I feel like not really. I mean, it's difficult for me to judge that because, like I said again, I'm not an experienced carrier player. But the one problem that I've run into is that if you're up against a battleship heavy set, or you're bottom tier and you're up against things like Clevelands or heavy cruisers, you'll be run out of planes very, very quickly. That was really one of my main problems. It doesn't happen always, so the faster cycle time is still not bad, especially if you're really not very secure about your targeting of destroyers. But you know, all in all, it feels more like one of those ships that you probably want to grind across and get up to tier 8. So in the not too far distant future, I'll be actually getting my hands onto a tier 8 carrier, although that is scary in all manner of ways. But we'll see how terribly I'll do. I keep going. We've got up to tier 9 currently in the preview, so that'll be coming up in the coming weeks. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.